Hi, it's Holly, and welcome to another discussion-y video. And in this one, I want to talk about feelings and book reviews and or ratings. And this is something I've wanted to talk about for a while. And yeah, it's really just a discussion, in my opinion. It's not like a be-all, end-all thing. And I wrote notes, but I'm not necessarily sure how coherent this will be because I'm kind of conflicted on my thoughts on the subjects. Basically what this is should your feelings impact your book ratings and reviews? So the way a book makes you feel, both positive and negatively, should that impact the rating? So, and this is specifically about the content of the book, not the author. I think that's a whole nother discussion where if you have positive feelings about the author or negative feelings about the author and how that impacts you doing those things, that's a whole nother issue. But for this one, yeah, just about how the book makes you feel. Personally, for me, the way a book makes me feel absolutely impacts the way that I review and rate my books. Mostly how I review more than I rate. So there's a couple ways that this works. One is I'm more likely to do a video review of a book if I have strong feelings about it. Whether negatively or positively, I'm more likely to do that if it made me feel something. Lately I've been doing written reviews of everything I read, but I can definitely tell that the length of my review changes based on my feelings. So it is typically longer if it made me feel like really happy or really emotional, or if it made me really angry or annoyed, versus if it was just like it was a good book but I wasn't overly moved by it either way. It tends to be a much shorter, brief review. And I will say that typically for me, when it comes to ratings, the difference between a 4-star book and a 5-star book for me a lot of times is the feelings. Like, okay, example, the Slammed series versus Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. So I'm picking the same author, two different books. Let's say Slammed and Maybe Someday. Slammed I gave 4 stars, Maybe Someday I gave 5. The huge difference there, because I think they're both incredibly well written books. I think they're both interesting storylines. I think they're well developed, the plots are interesting, the characters are interesting. The huge difference is I didn't feel the same level of emotion in Slammed that I felt in Maybe Someday. I struggled to connect a little bit to the emotions of Lake's character in Slammed versus Sydney and Ridge in Maybe Someday. I felt like I was living their lives, and I was angry when they were angry, I was sad when they were sad, I was happy when they were happy, I got butterflies when Sydney got butterflies. I didn't feel that as strongly or at all a lot of times when I was reading Slammed. So Slammed got 4 stars, Maybe Someday got 5. But then, I feel like whenever you talk about this is you need to figure out how much power can emotions have over what you review. And in a lot of ways this is something I've struggled with, because so an example of this is Making Faces by Amy Harmon. I freaking loved that story, and I cried for like the last 100 pages of it, I think, and I was incredibly touched by that story. But at the same time, I'm not sure I can ever reread it, because I don't think I can ever put myself there emotionally again. That being said, I gave it 5 stars, but I struggle with whether or not I should have given it 5 stars. Because to me, a lot of times a 5-star book is a book I could easily reread over and over again. So, but if the emotions are making me not want to reread it, is it fair to give it 5 stars? Or should it not come into it at all? Like, it's a really difficult thing for me to make a decision on. And I mean, I basically just make a book by book basis, and I try to be as universal as possible with my ratings, but unfortunately that's not possible. All you can do is try. And then there's the issue of like the series. So an example of this is like the Summer I Turned Pretty series. So I did a review discussion ranty video on this series, and I actually enjoyed the first two books. It's The Summer I Turned Pretty and It's Not Summer Without You. I believe I gave both of them 4 stars. And then I read We'll Always Have Summer, which is the last book, and this got 2 stars from me, I believe. And this book pissed me off. I'm like the one person in the world who didn't like this series, apparently. Or didn't like this book, I should say. I did like the previous 2 books. My issue is I felt like my dislike of this book has impacted my feelings on the other 2 books. Now, I don't intend to go change my ratings because those still stand, but my feelings for this book and the conclusion of the series makes me never want to reread the first 2 again, because why would I want to when I don't like the ending? And it also makes me struggle. I think my review was really me just like complaining about this book, and that's not, you know, in retrospect, is that fair? Like, I'm like nervous to read any other Jenny Han book at this point, because people love this series and I didn't, and people love her other books, so now I'm scared to read them because I obviously had a differing thought on this series. But is it fair for me to feel that way? I don't know. Really, that's basically the summary of this video, is me just saying that I don't know and just talking. Another example of that is this series, so Beautiful Disaster and Walking Disaster. Actually, when I had originally read Beautiful Disaster, I really struggled with rating it because I had some strong feelings on the content of the story, like whether or not it was sending a good message versus how engrossing I found the story. And I don't remember what I ended up rating it. I think it was 3 stars. But it took me several months to figure out what I wanted to rate it, and it was because I couldn't figure out if my feelings on the subject matter should impact my rating. Because normally if a book sucks me in the way this does, I would give it 4, 4.5, maybe 5 stars, but I was really conflicted on this. And then I think in a lot of ways, because of my feelings here, I went into Walking Disaster, which is the same story from the hero Travis's point of view. I struggled with wanting, like, my opinions on the subject matter from the first book impacted my reading of the second book, which I think is a part of the reason I disliked it so much. And while I enjoyed Beautiful Disaster, and in a way I kind of want to reread it to see if my thoughts change or don't change in a reread, I kind of don't want to, because just like with the Summer I Turned Pretty series, Walking Disaster turned me off of it. So did any of that make sense? I hope it did, but I'm honestly not sure if it did or not. So yeah, I'm sorry if it didn't, but let me know if you have any thoughts on the whole feelings and book reviews ratings thing. I feel like people talk about like the feels all the time, and I just want to know, especially negative feelings, like how negative feelings affect you, like especially series. Like if you're one of those people that really hated Mockingjay, are you able to go back and reread The Hunger Games and Catching Fire and still really enjoy it? Or does your feelings, or Divergent is a good example of that, things like that, like, you know, just how does it, and does it affect your future reading? Like I said, I'm afraid to read a Jenny Han book now, and like the Divergent situation, like if Veronica Roth came out with another book, would you immediately go buy it, or would you be more hesitant to read it? So yeah, just let me know what you think, because I'm just curious, I guess. So thank you for watching. Bye.